In the harsh Wyoming wilderness, a story of loss and redemption unfolds. Sarah Mitchell's world crumbles when her twins die during childbirth, a tragedy that drives her husband to unthinkable cruelty. In his grief-stricken rage, he abandons her in a raging snowstorm, leaving her to freeze in nothing but a hospital gown. Just as hope seems lost, a wealthy rancher discovers her fragile form in the drifts. He brings her to his remote ranch, where healing begins through quiet moments and gentle understanding. But the scars of betrayal run deep, and Sarah's path to trust remains uncertain. Could this compassionate stranger be the key to mending her broken heart? Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The blue and pink striped baby blanket lay folded neatly on the hospital windowsill, its hand-knitted edges catching the pale winter sunlight. Sarah had spent months making it, each stitch woven with dreams of the twins she carried. Now, as she held their lifeless bodies, those dreams unraveled like loose threads. "Would you like to hold them a little longer?" The nurse's voice was gentle, understanding. Her practiced compassion suggested she'd guided other mothers through this unthinkable path before. Sarah nodded, unable to form words. Her daughter and son, perfect in their stillness, weighed nothing and everything in her arms. Emma had her father's nose, and little James, named after her grandfather, had the same chin dimple Sarah saw in her own baby pictures. They were beautiful, peaceful, and eternally asleep. Mark stood by the window, his broad shoulders rigid with tension. He hadn't touched the twins yet, hadn't even looked at them properly since the doctor delivered the news. His wedding ring made soft tapping sounds against the window frame as his fingers drummed an erratic rhythm. "This isn't right," he muttered, his voice hoarse. "We did everything right." They had. Monthly checkups, proper nutrition, no alcohol, not even a sip of coffee. Sarah had followed every rule, read every book, attended every class. Yet here they were, in a room filled with silence where there should have been newborn cries. "Mark," Sarah whispered, "please come hold them just once. They're so beautiful." He turned then, and the look in his eyes made Sarah's heart stutter. Gone was the warm brown gaze that had loved her through 8 years of marriage. In its place was something wild, something broken, beautiful. His laugh was sharp, cutting. "They're dead, Sarah. Dead because your body couldn't do the one thing it was supposed to do." The words hit her like physical blows. The nurse stepped forward, her professional demeanor hardening. "Sir, I'm going to have to ask you to..." "To what?" Mark's voice rose. "To calm down, to accept this, to pretend this is okay." Sarah clutched her babies closer, their cooling bodies a shield against his rage. She recognized this side of Mark, the volatile temper he usually reserved for broken equipment on their farm, or particularly stubborn livestock. But never, in all their years together, had it been directed at her. "I need some air," he growled, stalking toward the door. It slammed behind him, the sound echoing through the quiet room. The nurse touched Sarah's shoulder. "Would you like me to call someone? Your family?" Sarah shook her head. Her parents had passed 3 years ago in a car accident, and Mark's family lived 2 states away. They were alone here, just as they'd been alone when they'd first moved to Wyoming, chasing Mark's dream of running his own farm. Just a few more minutes with them, please." The nurse nodded and withdrew, leaving Sarah to memorize every detail of her children's faces. Emma's delicate eyelashes, James's tiny fingers, the perfect shell of their ears. She hummed softly, an old lullaby her mother used to sing, her tears falling onto their blanket-wrapped forms. "Sleep tight, my angels," she whispered, kissing each perfect forehead. "Mama loves you. Mama will always love you." When the nurse returned, Sarah let her take them away. The hand-knitted blanket remained on the windowsill, its cheerful stripes now a monument to what should have been. Through the window, she could see Mark in the parking lot below, pacing in the swirling snow, his grief taking shape, as something dark and dangerous. The hospital discharge papers trembled in Sarah's hands as Mark drove in tense silence. The medication they'd given her made everything seem slightly unreal, like she was watching someone else's tragedy unfold. Snow fell heavily outside, thick, flakes catching in the truck's headlights. "We should wait until morning," she ventured quietly. "The storm's getting worse." Mark's knuckles whitened on the steering wheel. "I'm not spending another minute in that place." The truck swerved suddenly, leaving the main road for a snow-covered track that led into the wilderness. Sarah's heart began to pound. "This isn't the way home." "Home?" Mark laughed, a sound that held no warmth. "That nursery you spent months decorating? Those 2 empty cribs? That's not home anymore. That's a museum of failure." "Please," Sarah whispered. "You're scaring me." "Scaring you?" The truck jerked to a stop, sliding slightly in the deep snow. "You think you're scared now? Try carrying on our family name alone. Try facing my parents, telling them their only son's line ends here because you couldn't." "It wasn't my fault." The words burst from her, surprising them both. "The doctor said sometimes these things just happen. We can try again. We can—" The slap caught her completely off guard, snapping her head against the window. In 8 years of marriage, he had never raised a hand to her. The shock of it silenced them both for a long moment. Then Mark was out of the truck, stomping through the snow to her door. She fumbled with her seatbelt, but the medication made. Her movements slow, clumsy. The door yanked open and bitter cold rushed in. "Mark, please," she begged as he grabbed her arm, dragging her out into the storm. Her hospital gown offered no protection against the wind. "Think about what you're doing." "I have thought about it," he growled, pushing her away from the truck. "I've thought about how I can't look at you without seeing them. How every time you touch me, I'll remember how they felt, cold and still in that hospital room." Sarah stumbled in the deep snow, her bare feet already numbing. Her wedding ring caught the truck's headlights as she raised her hands in supplication. "We're both hurting. We need each other now more than ever. I don't need a reminder of my loss." He backed toward the truck. "If God wanted to take something from me, he should have taken you instead of my children." The words cut deeper than the cold. Sarah watched, disbelieving, as he climbed back into the truck. The engine roared, drowning out her final plea. As the taillights disappeared into the swirling snow, her wedding ring slipped from her trembling, her finger disappearing into the white drifts at her feet. She stood there, shock temporarily numbing her to both the cold and the betrayal. The hospital gown whipped around her legs, the thin cotton already soaked through. In the distance, she could no longer hear the truck's engine over the howling wind. Reality crashed in with brutal force. She was alone in a blizzard, miles from anywhere, dressed in nothing but a hospital gown. Her body, still recovering from childbirth, screamed in protest as she forced herself to move. Every step was agony, her bare feet breaking through the snow's crust to sink into the deeper drifts beneath. She had no idea which direction led to safety. The swirling snow obscured any landmarks, and darkness was falling fast. Her thoughts began to move as slowly as her frozen limbs. Hypothermia, she realized distantly. The same clinical part of her mind that had absorbed all those pregnancy books now informed her that she had perhaps an hour before her body gave up completely. Still, she pushed on. One step, then another. She thought of Emma and James, their perfect little faces. "I'm sorry," she whispered to the storm. "Mama's so sorry she couldn't keep you safe, couldn't give you life." When she finally collapsed, the snow felt almost warm. As consciousness began to fade, she thought she heard hoofbeats approaching through the storm. A trick of the wind, surely. Or perhaps her angels, coming to lead her home to her babies. Her last coherent thought was that at least in death, she would finally get to hold them again. James Crawford checked his grandfather's pocket watch for the 3rd time, its gold case frosted with ice. He shouldn't have stayed so late at the Wilson Ranch, but Tom's eldest had needed help with a breech-birth heifer. Now he was racing darkness, and the worst storm of the season. His stallion Thunder picked his way carefully through the deepening snow. James trusted the horse's instincts more than his own in weather like this. 20 years of ranching had taught him that much at least. Thunder suddenly stopped, ears pricked forward. James was about to urge him on when he saw it, a pale shape in the snow, barely visible through the swirling white. His first thought was deer, maybe injured. But as Thunder edged closer, his heart dropped. A woman lay crumpled in the snow, wearing nothing but a hospital gown. Dark hair fanned out against the white, and her skin held the bluish tinge of severe hypothermia. For a moment, he thought he was too late. Then he saw her fingers twitch. James dismounted quickly, his own, hands shaking as he pressed fingers to her neck. A pulse flickered, weak but present. He shrugged out of his heavy ranch coat, wrapping it around her frozen form. Up close, he could see bruises forming on her face, raw marks on her arms that spoke of violent hands. "Ma'am, can you hear me?" He gently lifted her, alarmed at how light she felt. "Stay with me now." Her eyelids fluttered, revealing pain-glazed hazel eyes. "Angels," she whispered, "coming for my babies." The word babies hit him like a physical blow. He noticed then the hospital bracelet on her wrist, the way her hospital gown stretched slightly across her middle, signs of recent pregnancy. But there was no child here in the snow with her. "No angels today, ma'am," he said firmly, carrying her to Thunder. "Just an old rancher and his horse." Getting her mounted was a challenge. She was barely conscious, her body stiff with cold. James ended up mounting first, then pulling her up in front of him. She slumped against his chest, her breathing shallow. "Thunder, take us home," he murmured, turning the horse toward Crawford Ranch. The stallion needed no urging, sensing the urgency in his master's voice. James kept one arm tight around the woman's waist, the other on the reins. Through the layers of coat and clothing, he could feel her shivering, a good sign, actually. It was when the shivering stopped that you had to worry. "Stay with me," he repeated, more prayer than command. "My ranch is just a few miles ahead. Warm fire, hot coffee, safe harbor from whatever storm brought you here." She stirred slightly. "Mark," the name came out as a sob. "Why?" "Shh," James soothed, though anger burned in his chest. Someone named Mark was responsible for this. He'd bet his ranch on it. Someone had thrown this woman away like trash, leaving her to freeze to death. Thunder picked up his pace, sensing home was near. Through the swirling snow, James could just make out the lights of his ranch house. Martha, his housekeeper, would still be up. She never slept until he made it home in bad weather. The woman's shivering had grown more violent, her teeth chattering audibly. James hunched over her, trying to shield her from the worst of the wind. His grandfather's watch ticked steadily in his pocket, counting down precious minutes. Almost. "There," he promised. "Just hold on a little longer. You're safe now." She made a small sound, somewhere between a whimper and a sigh, and pressed closer to his warmth. Something about her desperate trust broke his heart. What kind of man would do this to her? Leave her to die in a blizzard? Thunder's hooves finally clattered onto the wooden bridge that marked the entrance to Crawford Ranch. Through the snow, warm light spilled from the main house windows. As if on cue, the front door opened, spilling more light into the storm. "Martha!" James called out. "Need help here?" The woman in his arms had gone still, but when he looked down, her eyes were open, watching the approaching lights with a mix of fear and desperate hope. She looked young, he realized, too young for whatever tragedy had brought her to this moment. "Welcome to Crawford Ranch," he said softly. "You're going to be all right now, I promise." Martha Davidson had served as housekeeper at Crawford Ranch for 30 years, but she'd never seen James Crawford carry a woman across the threshold before. The young thing in his arms was more dead than alive, her hospital gown crusted with ice. "Guest room's ready," Martha said, already moving. "I put the electric blanket on high." An antique quilt, handed down through 3 generations of Crawfords, lay across the 4-poster bed. Martha pulled it back as James gently laid their unexpected guest down. In the warm lamplight, the woman's injuries were stark. bruises blooming. On her face, raw abrasions on her arms, feet blue with frostbite. "Should we call Doc Wilson?" Martha asked, already knowing the answer. "Storm's too bad. He'd never make it." James's voice was tight with controlled anger. "We'll have to do what we can ourselves." Martha nodded, gathering supplies. Hot water bottles, warm compresses, the medical kit they kept for ranch emergencies. 30 years of treating everything from hypothermia to horse kicks had taught her plenty. "Her pulse is stronger," James reported, fingers pressed to the woman's wrist. "But she's still too cold. Hospital gown needs to come off and it's soaked through." Martha shooed him toward the door. "Out with you now. Let me tend to her properly." James hesitated. She was talking about babies on the ride here. And that hospital bracelet? Martha's heart sank as she read the bracelet. Sarah Mitchell, maternity ward. "Go on now," she said more gently. "I'll handle this part." Once James left, Martha worked quickly, efficiently. The wet hospital gown was replaced with warm flannel pajamas. Hot water bottles were tucked around Sarah's core. The worst of the frostbite was on her feet, but thankfully not severe enough for permanent damage. Throughout it all, Sarah drifted, in and out of consciousness, mumbling occasionally about twins and someone named Mark. Martha's experienced hands were gentle, but her heart was breaking. She'd seen enough in her years to recognize the signs of both recent childbirth and domestic violence. A soft knock announced James's return. "How is she?" "Warming up slowly," Martha replied. "But she'll need watching through the night. The shock alone." He nodded, setting a cup of hot broth on the bedside table. "I'll take first watch. You get some rest." "James Crawford, I've known you since you were knee-high to a grasshopper. You've got that look." "What look?" "Like you're fixing to right some wrongs." She touched his arm. "Whatever happened to this girl, it's not your battle to fight." His jaw set stubbornly. "Someone left her to die in that storm, Martha. Left her knowing she'd just lost her babies. What kind of man does that? The kind that's not worth you getting tangled up with." But she knew that look. James had his grandfather's sense of justice and his grandfather's stubborn streak. Sarah stirred then, eyelids fluttering. "Cold," she whispered. James was beside her instantly, adjusting the blankets. "You're safe now," he said softly. "You're at Crawford Ranch. No one's going to hurt you here." Her eyes opened fully, fear and confusion warring in their hazel depths. She tried to sit up, but James's gentle hand on her shoulder kept her still. "Easy now," he soothed. "You've got some frostbite and bruising that needs healing. Martha here's gotten you warmed up, but you need to rest." Sarah's gaze darted between them, then to the unfamiliar room with its solid wooden furniture and thick curtains. My babies." Martha's heart broke at the raw pain in those two words. She sat carefully on the edge of the bed, taking Sarah's cold hand in her warm one. "Rest now, child. There'll be time for talking later." Tears slid down Sarah's temples into her hair. "He left me there. He really left me there. And now you're here," James said firmly. "Safe and warm with people who want to help. That's all you need to focus on right now." Something in his steady voice seemed to reach her. Sarah's rigid muscles slowly relaxed, though her hand still clutched Martha's like a lifeline. "Think you can manage some broth?" Martha asked, reaching for the cup James had brought. A tiny nod. As Martha helped her sip, Sarah's eyes kept returning to James, who stood like a sentinel by the window. There was fear there, but also something else, the first fragile stirrings of trust. An empty silver picture frame sat on the guest room dresser, its surface reflecting the pale morning light. Sarah stared at it from her bed, seeing not the blank space, but the family portrait that would never be. Herself, Mark, and the twins. Her arms ached with phantom weight, her body still believing it should be holding her babies. 3 days had passed since James Crawford had found her in the snow. Her feet were healing, the frostbite responding well to Martha's careful treatment. The bruises on her face had deepened to purple, telling their own story of that terrible night. A soft knock interrupted her thoughts. "Come in," she called, quickly wiping her eyes. James entered, carrying a breakfast tray. He'd made these morning visits a routine, always announcing himself clearly, always maintaining a careful distance. She'd noticed how he never blocked the doorway, always ensuring she could see a clear path to escape if she needed it. "Martha's famous buttermilk pancakes," he said, setting the tray across her lap. "Best medicine in Wyoming." The pancakes smelled wonderful, but her throat felt too tight to eat. "I should leave soon. I've imposed enough." "You're not imposing." His voice was gentle but firm. "Dr. Wilson's coming by today to check on you properly. Storm's finally cleared enough for travel." Sarah pushed the pancakes around her plate. "I don't have any way to pay—" "Stop." James settled into the chair by her bed, his movements deliberately slow and non-threatening. "You're not a burden. You're not an imposition. You're someone who needed help, and this ranch has always been a place where help is freely given." Tears spilled despite her best efforts. "I keep thinking I'll wake up and this will all be a nightmare. That I'll still be pregnant. That Mark will still be—" She couldn't finish. James was quiet for a long moment, his weathered hands clasped loosely in his lap. "My wife, Caroline, died in childbirth 12 years ago," he said finally. "Along with our daughter." Sarah's head snapped up, meeting his eyes for the first time that morning. She saw there not pity, but deep understanding. "For months afterward, I'd wake up reaching for her," he continued. "The pain, it doesn't go away completely, but it does change, becomes something you can carry without breaking." "How?" The word was barely a whisper. "One breath at a time, one day at a time." He gestured to the empty picture frame. "And you don't try to fill the empty spaces too quickly. You let them be empty until you're ready." A sob escaped her then, raw and painful. James didn't move. To touch her, didn't offer empty platitudes. He simply sat, a steady presence while she grieved. When the storm of emotion passed, she found she could breathe a little easier. "Tell me about them. Your wife and daughter?" A soft smile touched his eyes. "Caroline loved spring best. Said it was when the ranch showed its true colors. We were going to name our daughter April." They talked through the morning, the pancakes growing cold and forgotten. James shared memories of Caroline, and Sarah found herself speaking of the twins, their perfect fingers, their peaceful faces. Each word was agony, but somehow speaking their names made them more real, more honored. "I don't know how to be in the world anymore," she admitted finally. "Everything I was, wife, mother, farmer's wife, it's all gone." "Then be something else," James said simply. "Be Sarah, just Sarah, until you figure out the rest." She looked at him then, really looked. The morning sun brought out silver, threads in his dark hair, laugh lines around his eyes that spoke of joy despite loss. Here was a man who had walked through his own valley of shadows and emerged carrying his grief with grace. "I'm afraid," she whispered, "all the time, of Mark finding me, of being alone, of never feeling whole again." "Fear's natural," he replied, "but you're stronger than you know. I saw that strength when you were fighting to live in that storm, and you're not alone. Not anymore." The empty picture frame caught the light again, but this time Sarah saw something different in its reflection. Not what was lost, but what might someday be. Not today, not tomorrow, but someday. "Thank you," she said softly, "for everything." "That's what neighbors do out here," he answered. "We look after our own." The scent of fresh herbs filled the ranch house kitchen. Rosemary, thyme, and sage growing in terracotta pots along the windowsill. Sarah ran her fingers through the aromatic leaves as morning light streamed through the glass. 2 weeks at Crawford Ranch had taught her the rhythm of the place, the quiet certainty of each day's routines. Martha hummed as she kneaded bread dough, her strong hands working with practiced ease. "Those herbs need pinching back," she commented. "Keep them from getting too leggy." Sarah found herself reaching for the kitchen shears before she could. Think too hard about it. It was the first time she'd offered to help without being asked. Her hands trembled slightly, but the familiar work steadied her. "Just like that," Martha approved. "You've got a good touch with growing things." The praise brought an unexpected warmth to Sarah's cheeks. On their farm, Mark had dismissed her herb garden as frivolous. Not real farming, he'd said. But here, Martha treated every task as worthy, from baking bread to tending plants. The kitchen door opened, bringing a blast of cold air and James's boots on the threshold. "Something smells good in here." "Herb bread," Martha answered. "Sarah's." "Idea." James's smile reached his eyes, crinkling the corners. "Sounds perfect. We could use something warm after morning chores." Sarah found herself smiling back before she caught herself. The expression felt foreign on her face, like muscles long unused. But it didn't hurt as much as she'd expected. "I could help," she offered quietly. "With chores, I mean. I know my way around a farm." James and Martha exchanged a look she couldn't quite read. "Doc Wilson did say some light activity would be good," Martha said carefully. "Long as you don't overdo. The chickens need feeding," James suggested, "and Thunder's always gentle with new folks." The prospect of going outside sent a flutter of anxiety through Sarah's stomach. She hadn't left the house since that first night, but the morning was bright, the sky a clear Wyoming blue that seemed to go on forever. "I'll get my coat," she said, surprising herself with her own certainty. The coat was another kindness, thick wool lined with fleece, borrowed from Martha's closet. Sarah wrapped it around herself like armor before stepping out onto the porch. Crawford Ranch spread out before her, a patchwork of snow-covered pastures and sturdy outbuildings. Nothing like the stark efficiency of their farm, where Mark had stripped away anything that didn't serve a direct purpose. Here, morning glories climbed the fence posts and wind chimes hung from the barn eaves. James waited patiently while she took it all in. "Chickens first," he suggested. "They get mighty vocal if breakfast is late." The henhouse was warm and familiar, filled with soft clucking and the smell of fresh hay. Sarah found herself falling into old patterns, checking nests, spreading feed, talking softly to the curious hens that pecked around her feet. "You're good with them," James observed from the doorway. "Most new folks make them nervous. We had chickens before." She swallowed hard. "I always liked morning chores best, everything fresh and possible." He nodded, understanding in his silence. When they moved on to the stables, she felt steady enough to face Thunder, James's big bay stallion. The horse lowered his head to her outstretched hand, breath warm against her palm. "He remembers you," James said softly. From that night, the memory was fragmented, cold and fear and strong arms holding her safe. "Horses know good souls." James handed her a curry brush. "Want to help me get him ready for the day?" "Working." Together, they groomed Thunder until his coat gleamed. Sarah found herself relaxing into the rhythm of it, the simple pleasure of caring for something living. When the horse nudged her shoulder affectionately, she didn't flinch. "Thank you," she said as they walked back to the house, "for letting me help." "Thank you for helping," James replied simply. "Place runs better with more hands." She caught sight of her reflection in a window, cheeks pink from the cold, eyes clearer than they'd been in days. The woman looking back at her wasn't whole, not yet, but she wasn't broken beyond repair either. Martha met them at the door with fresh coffee and warm bread. The herbs Sarah had tended perfumed every slice, turning a simple meal into something like hope. The newspaper lay on the kitchen table like a grenade waiting to explode. Sarah stared at her own face in the grainy photograph, taken at last summer's county fair. "Local woman missing after tragic loss," screamed the headline. Below it, Mark's carefully crafted story of a grieving mother who had wandered away from the hospital in a state of confusion. "He's looking for me." Her voice sounded distant to her own ears. James stood at the window, his posture tense. "He won't find you here. Crawford Ranch isn't in his search area." The article painted Mark as the devoted husband, desperately searching for his unstable wife. No mention of the bruises, the abandonment in the storm. In the eyes of the law, she was his to claim. Martha set a cup of tea in front of Sarah, the china clinking slightly. "Maybe it's time to tell the authorities what really happened." Sarah's hands trembled as she picked up the paper. There, in smaller print, Mark Mitchell. Appeals for anyone with information about his wife's whereabouts to contact the sheriff's department. Her in-laws were quoted, describing her as emotionally fragile after losing the twins. "They'll believe him," she whispered. "He's respected in the community. I'm just the wife who couldn't even carry his children to term." "Stop!" James's voice was quiet but firm. "That's his voice in your head, not truth." He was right, she realized. Even now, Mark's words colored how she saw herself. Weak, broken, failing at the one thing she was meant to do. "The sheriff's an old friend," James continued. "Tom Wilson, he's Doc Wilson's brother. He'll listen without judgment. Take your statement properly." Sarah wrapped her arms around herself, remembering the bite of winter wind. "And if they don't believe me? If they make me go back?" "Not happening." The steel in James's voice made her look up. "This is Wyoming ranch country. We have our own ways of handling things." Martha clicked her tongue. "James Crawford, don't you go getting any ideas about frontier justice. Just saying she has choices." He moved to the table, careful to telegraph his movements as always. "You're not alone in this, Sarah. Whatever you decide, we'll support you." The newspaper photo showed her smiling, Mark's arm around her shoulders. They looked like the perfect farming couple, all their dreams ahead of them. Had she been happy then, or just better at pretending? "I need time," she said finally, "to figure out who I am without him defining me." James nodded. "Time you've got. Ranch is remote enough that folks only come by invitation, and Martha's got a sixth sense about unwanted visitors. Comes from 30 years of keeping ranch hands in line." Martha sniffed, but her eyes were kind. "Nobody gets past my radar." Sarah traced her fingers over the newspaper photo, over the smile of a woman who didn't know what was coming. That woman was gone, scattered like ashes in a winter storm. But maybe, just maybe, someone stronger could rise from those ashes. "I should dye my hair," she said suddenly. "Cut it too, just in case." "I've got some walnut dye," Martha offered. "Natural looking, won't damage your hair none." James raised an eyebrow. "You just happen to have hair dye on hand?" "A woman's. Got her secrets," Martha winked. "Besides, you never know when someone might need a fresh start." The newspaper continued its litany of lies, but Sarah found she could breathe through the panic now. Crawford Ranch had become more than shelter. It was becoming a place of transformation. "Thank you," she said softly, "for not asking questions that first night, for just helping." "Questions can wait," James replied. "Healing comes first." Martha gathered up the newspaper, her movements deliberately casual. "Well, if you're changing your hair, might as well make a proper evening of it. I'll bring down my mother's old hair scissors. She was a stylist in her day." Looking at their steady faces, Martha's practical kindness, James's quiet strength, Sarah felt something shift inside her. The woman in the newspaper was a stranger now. She had died in that snowstorm, along with all her illusions about love and marriage. Whoever she was becoming, she would be stronger, wiser, and never, again, would she let anyone make her feel small. The first wildflower of the season pushed through the melting snow, a hardy purple crocus defying winter's lingering chill. Sarah knelt beside it, her newly darkened hair falling forward as she touched the delicate petals. 6 weeks at Crawford Ranch had brought changes as subtle and persistent as the shifting seasons. "Beautiful, isn't it?" James's voice carried across the yard. "Caroline used to say crocuses were God's way of making promises." Sarah stood, brushing dirt from her jeans, another gift from Martha's seemingly endless supply of spare clothes. Promises of spring, of renewal. He led Thunder from the stable, the horse already saddled. "Thought you might like to see more signs of spring. If you're up for a ride?" Her heart skipped. She hadn't been on a horse since she was a teenager, long before she met Mark. "I'm not sure I remember how." "Thunder's gentle as they come." James, patted the horse's neck. "And I'll be right beside you." The offer hung in the air between them, weighted with more than just a simple ride. This would be her first time venturing beyond the immediate ranch grounds, her first real step back into the wider world. "I'd like that," she heard herself say. James's smile warmed his eyes as he helped her mount, his hands steady and respectful. She settled into the saddle, muscle memory returning as thunder shifted beneath her. James swung up behind her, reaching around to hold the reins, but careful to maintain space between them. They rode at an easy walk, following a trail that wound through melting snowdrifts. The morning air held the crisp promise of change, winter releasing its grip one breath at a time. "Mark never let me ride," Sarah found herself saying. "Said it was too dangerous." James was quiet for a moment. "Seems to me the most dangerous thing is letting someone else decide what you can and can't do." The truth of it settled in her chest, beside the steady rhythm of thunder's hoofbeats. How many things had she given up? One small surrender at a time? They crested a small rise, and Sarah gasped. Below them, a meadow emerged from the snow like a patchwork quilt, patches of white giving way to green grass and early wildflowers. "Crawford Ranch's secret garden," James said softly. "Most folks don't know it's here. My grandfather used to bring my grandmother when they were courting." Sarah felt him tense slightly behind her, as if he hadn't meant to reveal that last detail. But the moment held no pressure, no expectations, just the quiet beauty of the meadow and the gentle sway of their shared saddle. "Tell me about them," she asked. "Your grandparents." As thunder picked his way down to the meadow, James spoke of the ranch's history, of his grandfather's determination to build something lasting, of his grandmother's dreams of making beauty flourish in the harsh landscape. She planted every type of flower that could survive Wyoming winters, he said, as they dismounted. Said a ranch needed more than just practical things to truly thrive. Sarah walked to where crocuses and early daffodils pushed through the melting snow. She was right. Beauty feeds something in the soul. Yes, it does. When she turned, she found James watching her with an expression that made her heart flutter. "I'm not ready," she said quickly, "for anything." "I know." His voice was gentle. "Healing takes its own time, like spring." They stood in comfortable silence, watching thunder graze among the wildflowers. Sarah felt something shift inside her, like ice breaking up on a river. Not a dramatic thaw, but the first subtle cracking of winter's hold. "Sometimes I feel guilty," she admitted, "for finding moments of peace, of happiness, when my babies never got the chance to live." James moved closer, slow and careful as always. "Your twins wouldn't want their mama to stop living. Joy honors their memory as much as grief does." Tears pricked her eyes, but they weren't the devastating storms of early grief. More like spring rain, gentle and cleansing. "Thank you for knowing exactly what to say. Just speaking truth as I see it," he offered his hand, ready to head back. She took it, letting him help her remount. The ride home was quiet, but it was a peaceful quiet, filled with the sounds of spring's awakening and the steady rhythm of shared breaths. The police report lay open on James's desk, its official letterhead stark against the worn wood. Sarah's hands trembled as she read the words. "Mark Mitchell expands search for missing wife to neighboring counties. Possible mental health crisis following loss of newborn twins. He's getting closer." The words stuck in her throat. Through the study window, she could see storm clouds gathering over the distant mountains, dark and threatening. James stood beside his desk, phone still in hand after the call from Sheriff Wilson. "Tom wanted us to know. Mark's been asking questions in town, showing your picture around." 2 months of peace shattered like glass. Sarah could almost feel the phantom grip of Mark's hands, the bite of winter wind. Her legs gave way, and she sank into the leather armchair by the fireplace. "I can't go back," the words came out as a whisper. "He'll kill me this time." "You won't have to." James's voice held the same quiet authority she'd come to trust. "Tom's on our side. He's seen enough domestic cases to read between the lines." Martha appeared in the doorway, her face tight with concern. "Just got off the phone with my sister in Idaho. She's ready whenever we need her." Sarah looked between them, realization dawning. "You've been planning for this since that first newspaper article," James admitted. Martha's sister runs a women's shelter. If it comes to it, she can help you disappear completely. New identity, new start. The thought of leaving Crawford Ranch sent a different kind of pain through her chest. This place had become home, its routines and quiet moments healing wounds she'd thought would never close. I don't want to run. The strength in her voice surprised her. I'm tired of letting him control my life, even from a distance. James and Martha exchanged a look she couldn't quite read. There's another option, James said carefully, but it's complicated. Tell me. Marriage. The word hung in the air. Between them, Wyoming still has common law marriage. If we filed the paperwork, backdated to when you arrived here, it would void any claims Mark has, Martha finished. Make it harder for him to force you back. Sarah's heart pounded. You'd do that? Risk getting tangled in all this? It would be on paper only, James assured her quickly. No expectations. Just legal protection. She stood, moving to the window. The storm clouds were closer now, casting shadows over the ranch. But unlike that night in the snow, she wasn't alone anymore. What aren't you telling me? She asked, noting the tension in James's shoulders. He sighed. Mark's been drinking, getting aggressive with his questions. Sheriff's worried he might do something rash if he finds out you're here. The old fear clawed at her throat, but something else rose to meet it. Anger, fierce and clarifying. I won't let him hurt anyone else. This place, what you've both done for me. Then let us help, Martha said softly. James's reputation in the community is solid. His word against Mark's would give me a fighting chance. Sarah turned from the window, facing them both. But it's not fair to you, James, being tied to someone so broken. You're not broken. The quiet conviction in his voice made her breath catch. You're the strongest person I know. Thunder rumbled in the distance as Sarah looked at the police. Report again. Her old life stared back from the grainy photograph, a woman she barely recognized now. If we do this, she said slowly, it has to be clear to everyone that it was my choice. That I wasn't kidnapped or coerced. I won't have you risking everything just to have Mark twist it around. James nodded. Tom suggested making a recorded statement, getting everything on record, including what happened that night. The storm was almost overhead now, but Sarah felt strangely calm. Then let's do it, all of it. I won't spend the rest of my life looking over my shoulder. Martha wiped suspicious moisture from her eyes. I'll put the kettle on. Some things are better discussed over tea. As Martha left, Sarah found herself standing close to James. Thank you for being willing to... Hey! His hand found hers, warm and steady. Whatever happens, you're not alone in this. Not anymore. Lightning flashed outside, but Sarah didn't flinch. She had weathered worse storms than this and emerged stronger. This time, she had shelter. This time, she had hope. The old locket lay in James's palm, its gold surface dulled with age. Inside, a faded photograph showed a young woman with his eyes and smile. My mother, he said softly. She died when I was 12. Sarah sat beside him on the porch swing, the evening air warm with late spring. Tomorrow they would drive into town to make her statement, but tonight was for deeper truths. She loved this ranch, James continued, built the herb garden Martha keeps tending, said a home needs growing things to truly live. Is that why you helped me? Sarah asked. Because of her? He closed the locket carefully. Partly, but also because I recognized something in your eyes that night. The same look I had when Caroline died. Tell me about that night? She hadn't dared ask before, but something about the quiet evening made it feel right. James was silent for a long moment, his thumb tracing the locket's worn surface. Caroline was 7 months along when the bleeding started. I was in town, meeting with cattle buyers. By the time I got to the hospital, Sarah's hand found his, offering the same comfort he'd given her so many times. You couldn't have known. That's what everyone said, but I carried the guilt for years, convinced myself I didn't deserve happiness after failing them both. The admission hung in the air between them. Sarah thought of her own guilt over the twins, the weight she'd carried. What changed? Time. Martha's stubbornness. A small smile touched his lips, and learning that love isn't a finite resource. Loving again doesn't dishonor what was lost. His words stirred something in her chest. Hope, fear, possibility. James, I know. He turned to face her fully. I know you're not ready, may never be ready, and that's okay. What we're doing tomorrow, the marriage paperwork, it doesn't have to mean anything beyond legal protection. But it did mean something. They both felt it in the gentle pressure of clasped hands, in shared glances over morning coffee, in the way they'd learned to read each other's silences. I dream about them, Sarah whispered. The twins, not nightmares anymore, but sweet dreams. They're playing in that meadow you showed me, surrounded by wildflowers. That's beautiful. But I wake up feeling guilty, like I'm betraying them by finding peace, by feeling... She couldn't finish. Joy? James suggested gently. Connection? She nodded, tears threatening. Mark used to say I felt things too deeply, that I needed to be more practical, more controlled. Mark was wrong about a lot of things. James's voice held quiet certainty. Feeling deeply isn't weakness, it's courage. The locket caught the last rays of sunset, gleaming like a promise. Your mother? Sarah asked. What would she have thought of all this? She would have loved you. No hesitation in his voice. Would have said you have her favorite kind of strength, the kind that blooms after storm damage. Sarah leaned, back letting the porch swing's gentle motions soothe her. I'm scared of tomorrow, of saying it all out loud, making it real again. I'll be right there. We all will. Me, Martha, Sheriff Tom. You're not facing this alone. No, she agreed softly. Not alone anymore. They sat in comfortable silence as dusk settled over the ranch. Somewhere in the distance, an owl called. The sound reminded Sarah of another night, another conversation. You never finished telling me about your mother's locket. James opened it again, letting her see the photograph. It was her mother's before her. Family legend says it was payment for helping a traveling family during the Depression. Great-grandmother used it to buy seed grain that saved the ranch. A legacy of helping others, Sarah observed. She always said blessings multiply when shared. He hesitated, then lifted the chain over his head. I want you to have it. James, I couldn't. Not as a proposal or a promise, just as a reminder that you're part of this ranch's story now, whatever comes next. With trembling fingers, Sarah accepted the locket. It felt warm from his skin, heavy with history and meaning. Thank you for everything. His smile held understanding and something deeper, something neither of them was ready to name. For now, it was enough to sit together in the gathering darkness, letting hope take root, like spring flowers after winter's thaw. The call came just before dawn, Martha's urgent knock, startling Sarah from uneasy dreams. James needs help in the barn. Stars falling, and there's trouble. Sarah's feet were moving before her mind could catch up. She'd made her statement to Sheriff Wilson yesterday, reliving every moment of that terrible night. Now, throwing on boots and jacket, she felt strangely clear-headed. The barn was warm and dark, lit only by emergency lanterns. James knelt beside Star, his face tight with concern. The mare's sides heaved with effort, but something was clearly wrong. Breech. Birth? He said as Sarah approached. Called the vet, but she's an hour out. We need to help now, or we'll lose them both. Sarah's heart stuttered. Images of another birth, another loss, threatened to overwhelm her. But Star's distressed wicker cut through the panic, grounding her in the present. Tell me what to do. James looked up, reading her face. You sure? After everything, I can do this. She knelt beside him, rolling up her sleeves. I helped birth calves on our farm. Just talk me through it. His hands guided hers, showing her where to feel, what to check. The foal was turned wrong, its back legs trying to come first. Each touch brought back memories of her own labor, but Sarah pushed through, focusing on Star's needs. That's it, James encouraged. We need to turn the foal, give it a chance. Working together, they managed to shift the tiny body. Star trembled with exhaustion, but her eyes held trust, as Sarah stroked her neck, murmuring soft encouragement. "Almost there. Girl, you can do this. Your baby needs you." The words caught in her throat, but she kept talking, kept touching. This birth would have a different ending. This mother would not know the agony of empty arms. With a final tremendous effort, Star pushed. The foal slid into the world, slick and seemingly lifeless. Sarah's hands moved without thought, clearing. Airways rubbing the tiny body vigorously. "Come on, little one," she whispered. "Choose life. Choose your mama." For one terrible moment, nothing happened. Then the foal twitched, coughed, and took its first shuddering breath. Star's head came up, nickering softly as her baby stirred. Sarah sat back on her heels, watching mother and child meet for the first time. Tears streamed down her face, but they weren't all grief. Something else flowed with them. Release, perhaps. Or healing. James's hand found her shoulder, steady and warm. "You did it. We did it." She leaned into his touch, letting herself feel both the pain and the triumph of the moment. "She's beautiful." The foal was struggling to stand on wobbly legs, Star's gentle encouragement guiding her. Black coat, white star on her forehead, a perfect mirror of her mother. "What will you name her?" James asked softly. Sarah touched the locket that still hung around her neck, thinking of legacies and new beginnings. "Hope," she said. "Her name is Hope." They stayed until the sun rose, watching mother and daughter bond. Sarah's hands, which had been empty for so long, felt strong again, capable. The memories of her twins were still there, but somehow less sharp, tempered by this new life she'd helped bring into the world. "Thank you," she said finally, "for trusting me to help." James's eyes held understanding. "You trusted yourself. That's what matters." Standing in the barn doorway, they watched the new day paint the ranch in soft colors. Sarah felt different, as if the night's work had shifted something fundamental inside her. "I've been so focused on what I lost," she said slowly, "on surviving. Maybe it's time to think about living again." "Yeah?" James's voice was carefully neutral, but hope flickered in his eyes. Sarah turned to face him fully. The morning light caught the silver in his hair, the kindness in his face. Here was a man who had seen her at her most broken and never once tried to fix her, only offered the space and support to heal herself. "Yeah," she whispered, and lifted her face to his. Their first kiss tasted of dawn and new beginnings, gentle as spring rain. When they parted, Sarah rested her forehead against his chest, listening to the steady beat of his heart. Behind them, Hope nursed contentedly, her mother's soft nickering a song of love and protection. Outside, the ranch was waking to another day, full of possibilities Sarah was finally ready to embrace. Garden seeds scattered across the kitchen table like promises, tomatoes, peppers, herbs and flowers. Sarah sorted them into neat piles, while Martha kneaded bread dough, the familiar rhythm punctuating their conversation. James's mother would have loved this, Martha said, nodding at Sarah's careful planning. "She always said a garden needs both beauty and purpose." Sarah touched the locket that still hung around her neck. In the month since Hope's birth, since that first kiss in the dawn light, everything had shifted. The legal marriage that had started as protection now felt like possibility. "I've been thinking about expanding the herb garden," she said. "Maybe adding some medicinal plants, things the vet could use. Planning to stay a while then?" Martha's eyes twinkled. Sarah felt warmth color her cheeks. "If that's okay. Honey, this has been your home since that first night. We were just waiting for you to feel it too." The screen door creaked, and James entered, bringing the scent of summer with him. His smile when he saw Sarah was automatic, natural as breathing. They'd been taking things slow, learning each other in quiet moments between ranch work and healing. "Garden planning?" He peered over her shoulder at the seed packets. "Ambitious layout. Too much?" Uncertainty crept into her voice. Old habits of second-guessing herself. "Perfect." He pressed a kiss to her temple. "The south field gets good light. Could expand there if you want." Such a simple exchange, but it held worlds of meaning. Mark would have questioned every decision, demanded justification for each seed. Packet. James simply offered support and space to grow. I'd like that. She leaned into his touch, though we should probably check with the ranch owner first. Already did. He's pretty sweet on the gardener. Martha made a show of focusing on her bread dough, but her smile was evident. These moments of gentle teasing, of normal life, no longer felt like betrayal to her grief. Joy and sorrow could coexist, she'd learned, like flowers and vegetables, sharing the same soil. The community garden project called again, James said, helping himself to coffee. Asked if you'd consider running some workshops on herb growing. Sarah stilled. I don't know. Mark's family might hear about it. Sheriff Tom's got deputies watching Mark, James reminded her. He hasn't been seen in the county for weeks. And you can't put your life on hold forever. He was right. The statement she'd given, detailing that night in the snow, was now official record. Mark's carefully constructed image had cracked under investigation. Other women had come forward, speaking of his temper, his controlling nature. Maybe, she said slowly, it's time to stop hiding. James sat beside her, his presence steady and grounding. Whatever you decide, I'm here. We both are, Martha added, and half the county besides. Word gets around, you know, about folks who need supporting. Sarah looked down at the seeds scattered before her. Each one held the potential for new life, just waiting for the right conditions to grow, like her. Like this tentative thing building between her and James. I love you, she said suddenly, the words falling like seeds themselves. I should have said it before, after Hope was born, or that first kiss, or any moment since, but I was afraid of what loving again might mean. James's hand found hers among the seed packets. I love you too, have since that night in the storm, though I didn't know it then. Martha sniffed suspiciously, turning away to put her bread in the oven. Outside, the summer sun painted the ranch in shades of possibility. Through the window, Sarah could see Hope racing around the paddock on her. Longlegs, Star watching proudly. Well then, she said, squeezing James's hand, let's plant a garden, something beautiful and lasting. Together, he agreed. The seeds seemed to glow in the afternoon light, not just plans for vegetables and flowers, but for a future she'd thought lost forever in the snow. Love, she was learning, could be like her herb garden, cultivated slowly, tended with care, growing stronger with each passing season. The broken fence post lay in the dirt, snapped by the impact of Mark's truck. Sarah stood frozen in the garden, dirt still clinging to her gloves, as her past and present collided with devastating force. So this is where you've been hiding, Mark's voice carried across the yard, slurred with alcohol and rage. Playing house with some rich rancher while I searched half the state. James stepped between them, his movement calm but purposeful. You need to leave, Mark. Now. Leave? Mark's laugh held no humor. That's my wife you've got here. My property. Sarah's hands trembled, but her voice stayed steady. I stopped being your anything the night you left me to die. You were confused, grieving. Mark took a step forward, swaying slightly. I've forgiven you for running away. It's time to come home. This is my home. Sarah touched the locket, at her neck, drawing strength from its weight. I'm not that woman anymore. Mark's eyes fixed on the jewelry, narrowing dangerously. Wearing his trinkets now. Sleeping in his bed? You didn't waste any time replacing our babies, did you? The cruel words struck like physical blows, but Sarah stood her ground. Don't you dare use them against me. You're the one who couldn't handle their loss. Handle it, Mark's voice rose. You killed them. Your weak body couldn't even do the one thing it was made for. James moved then, fast and decisive. His fist connected with Mark's jaw, sending him stumbling backward. That's enough. But Mark recovered quickly, charging forward with drunk determination. The two men collided hard, wrestling in the garden Sarah had so carefully tended. Flowers crushed under their feet as they fought. James! Sarah started forward, but Martha appeared, grabbing her arm. Sheriff's on his way, the older woman said. Don't give him another target. They watched helplessly as James and Mark traded blows. James was stronger, more controlled, but Mark fought with the reckless energy of a man with nothing left to lose. A truck roared up the drive, Sheriff Tom Wilson, lights flashing. But before he could reach them, Mark broke free of James's grip and pulled something from his jacket. Metal glinted in the summer sun. "No!" Sarah's scream tore through the air as she recognized the gun. 2 shots cracked across the yard. James staggered, clutching his shoulder. Mark turned, weapon raising toward Sarah, but Sheriff Wilson was faster. His taser struck Mark square in the back, dropping him to the ground. Sarah ran to James, heart pounding. Blood seeped between his fingers where he pressed against the wound, but his eyes were clear. "Just a graze," he assured her. "I'm okay." Deputies swarmed the yard, securing Mark and calling for an ambulance. Martha appeared with the ranch's first aid kit, her hands steady as she helped Sarah tend to James. "You're under arrest, Sheriff," Wilson was saying, cuffing Mark's hands behind his back. "Attempted murder, assault with a deadly weapon, violating the restraining order." "She's my wife!" Mark shouted, struggling against the restraints. "You can't—" "She's my wife." James's voice cut through the chaos, firm despite his pain. "Legally married these past 3 months, and you just shot up private property with witnesses." Sarah pressed gauze against James's wound, fighting tears. "I'm so sorry. This is all my fault." "Hey," James caught her hand with his good one. "None of that. You didn't ask for any of this." As the deputies led Mark away, he kept shouting. Threats, accusations, promises of revenge. But his words held no power anymore. Sarah watched him go, feeling the last chains of her past finally break. "The garden's ruined," she said softly, looking at the trampled flowers. "We'll plant new ones." James winced as Martha tightened the bandage. Together. The ambulance arrived, paramedics rushing to check James's wound. Sarah stood with Martha watching them work. The broken fence post caught her eye again, splintered but not destroyed, like so many things in her life. "You okay, honey?" Martha asked quietly. Sarah touched the locket, thinking of all it represented: strength, survival, love that grew from loss. "I will be," she said. "We all will be." In the distance, thunder rolled across the summer sky. But this storm, like the man who had brought it, would pass. What remained would be stronger for having weathered it. The court papers felt heavy in Sarah's hands as she sat in the county courthouse waiting room. Divorce proceedings, assault charges, restraining order violations, the legal weight of her past stacked in neat, typed rows. "You don't have to do this," James said softly beside her, his arm still in a sling. "The DA has enough evidence without your testimony." "Yes, I do." She smoothed her skirt, borrowed from Martha's sister who had driven up from Idaho to support her. "For all the women who can't." The past week had brought revelations. After Mark's arrest, others had come forward, 3 ex-girlfriends with similar stories of control and violence. Their statements sat in the stack of papers, a chorus of voices saying, "Enough." "Mrs. Crawford." The bailiff appeared in the doorway. "They're ready for you." James squeezed her hand as she stood. In the gallery behind her, she felt the presence of her supporters: Martha, Sheriff Tom, Doc Wilson, even old Mrs. Henderson from the community garden. Word had spread quickly through ranch country about Mark's attack, and the community had rallied. Mark sat at the defendant's table, shoulders hunched in an orange jumpsuit. He looked smaller somehow, diminished without his careful mask of respectability. When he turned to look at her, she met his gaze steadily. "Please state your name for the record," the judge instructed. "Sarah Elizabeth Crawford." The name felt right on her tongue, chosen rather than given. "Formerly Sarah Mitchell. Please tell the court about the events of January 15th, the night your children were born." Sarah took a deep breath, touching the locket for courage. "I was 38 weeks pregnant with twins when I went into labor. The delivery, there were complications." Her voice grew stronger as she spoke, telling the full story for the first time. The stillbirth, Mark's rage, the abandonment in the storm. She described the hospital gown freezing to her skin, the endless white of the snow, the moment she had given up hope. "And then James Crawford found you?" "Yes." She glanced at her husband, drawing strength from his steady presence. "He saved my life that night. But more than that, he and Martha showed me what real love looks like, patient, supportive, allowing me to heal at my own pace." Mark's lawyer stood. "Isn't it true that you were emotionally unstable after losing the twins? That my client was simply trying to protect you from yourself?" "Objection!" The DA rose, argumentative. "Sustained." Sarah leaned forward to the microphone. "May I address that question, Your Honor?" The judge nodded. "Grief isn't instability," she said clearly. "Loss doesn't make us less worthy of respect, of safety, of love. What Mark did wasn't protection. It was punishment for failing to give him what he wanted, for daring to have needs of my own." In the defendant's chair, Mark's face darkened with familiar rage. But he was powerless now, his true nature exposed to the harsh light of justice. "And the events of last week?" the DA prompted. Sarah described the attack at the ranch, the destroyed garden, the shots that had wounded James. Her voice remained steady, even as she recounted her fear that history would repeat itself. "But it didn't," she concluded, "because this time I wasn't alone. This time I was strong enough to stand my ground." The testimony continued for another hour. Questions about dates, details, supporting evidence. Through it all, Sarah felt a strange sense of peace. Each truth spoken was a seed planted, growing something new from the ashes of her past. When she finally stepped down from the witness stand, the judge's eyes were kind. "Thank you, Mrs. Crawford. Your courage today is noted." James met her at the gallery gate, pulling her close with his good arm. Behind them, the legal machinery ground on, motions filed, arguments made, justice slowly taking shape. "I'm so proud of you," he whispered. Sarah leaned into his embrace, feeling the collective support of their community surrounding them. Martha pressed a handkerchief into her hand, and Sheriff Tom offered a congratulatory nod. Outside the courthouse, summer sunlight warmed the steps. Sarah paused, breathing in the clean mountain air. The weight of the court papers felt lighter. Now, transformed from burden to bridge, a path leading away from what was and toward what could be. "Ready to go home?" James asked. Sarah smiled, taking his hand. Home, not just a place, but a feeling, a choice, a triumph. A new wedding band gleamed in the lamplight, simple gold catching the glow. James held it out in his calloused palm as they sat on their favorite porch swing, the evening air sweet with late summer rain. "I know we're already married on paper," he said softly, "but I want to do this right, to ask you properly, with no fear or legal necessity behind it." Sarah touched the ring with trembling fingers. 3 months had passed since the trial. Mark's conviction had brought a 20-year sentence, his mask of respectability finally shattered beyond repair. "You don't have to do this," she whispered. "What we have is already more than I ever dreamed possible. That's exactly why I want to." James took her hand, his touch gentle. "Because every day with you shows me new possibilities. Because you've brought life back to this ranch in ways I thought were lost forever." Thunder rumbled in the distance, but it held no terror now. Like her memories of that winter night, the sound had lost its power to frighten. "The garden you planted," James continued, "it reminds me of my mother's, full of both beauty and purpose. Like you. And the way you helped birth hope, faced down your past in court, built something new from broken pieces. Sarah, you amaze me." Tears slipped down her cheeks, but they were healing tears, like the rain that fed her flowers. "Even with all my scars, especially with them, they're part of your strength." He shifted to face her fully. "I love you, Sarah Elizabeth. Will you marry me again? This time just because we want to?" She looked at the ring, remembering another one lost in winter snow. That one had been a shackle disguised as a promise. This was different, offered with open hands, acceptance of all she was. "The twins," she said softly. "I'll always be Their mother. They'll always be part of me. As they should be. James's free hand touched the locket at her neck. We'll honor them properly. Plant something special in the garden. Make a place for remembering. Martha's screen door creaked, and the older woman appeared with a tray. Thought you two might want some tea on this rainy evening. Sarah smiled, recognizing the deliberate timing. How long have you known about this? Oh, he's been planning for weeks. Martha set down the tray. Had me dig out his grandmother's china for the occasion. The familiar cups, edged in faded gold, held more than tea. They held history, continuity, the blend of old memories and new beginnings. Yes, Sarah said, turning back to James. Yes, I'll marry you again, for all the right reasons this time. He slipped the ring onto her finger, and Martha didn't even pretend not to cry. The rain fell harder, a curtain of silver in the porch lights, but they were safe and warm in their shared shelter. I've been thinking, Sarah said, leaning into James's embrace, about the ranch's future, about family. His arm tightened slightly around her. Yeah? The community garden project, it's growing. More people coming for workshops, learning about healing herbs and sustainable growing. Maybe we could do more with that. Help more people who need a fresh start. A sanctuary, James mused, like the ranch was for you. Martha nodded approvingly. Plenty of land out back could be developed. Guest cabins maybe. More gardens. We could work with the women's shelter in Idaho, Sarah added. Give people a place to heal, to grow new roots. I love it. James pressed a kiss to her temple. And I love you. The rain drummed on the roof, no longer a reminder of that terrible night, but a promise of growth and renewal. Sarah twisted the ring on her finger, feeling its rightness. When should we do it? She asked. The wedding? First frost, James suggested, when the garden's giving its last blooms. A celebration of endings and beginnings. Martha collected the empty teacups, her movements unhurried. I'll make my mother's spice cake for the reception. And maybe we can convince Sheriff Tom to officiate. They sat together in the growing darkness, planning their future while the healing rain fell. Sarah felt the last shadows of her past dissolving, washed away by love and purpose and possibility. The adoption papers rustled softly as Sarah set them on the kitchen table, 6 months into their proper marriage, and life had a way of surprising them with new possibilities. Martha poured coffee, while James read through the documents again. Twins, he said softly. What are the odds? Sarah's hands trembled slightly as she lifted her cup. The social worker says they've been hard to place. Special needs, and most families don't want to take on 2 at once. The photograph showed 2 little girls, both 4 years old, with identical brown eyes and gentle smiles. Amy walked with leg braces, while Beth hadn't spoken since their birth. Parents' accident 2 years ago. They need a home, Sarah continued, somewhere with space to grow, to heal, somewhere like here, James finished, reaching for her hand. Where healing seems to be what we do best. Martha wiped suspicious moisture from her eyes. Those rooms above the barn we've been fixing up for the sanctuary project, they'd make perfect bedrooms for little girls. Sarah touched the locket at her neck, thinking of other twins, other possibilities. I was afraid to even consider it at first, afraid it would feel like replacing Emma and James. But it doesn't, does it? James's voice was gentle with understanding. No, she smiled through tears. It feels like their legacy, like they're helping us find more love to give. The social worker's words echoed in her mind. These girls need parents who understand loss, who know that healing takes time and patience. Looking around the kitchen, at Martha's herbs in the window, at James's quiet strength, at the whole beautiful life they'd built from broken pieces, Sarah knew they could offer that. The ranch would be good for them, James mused. Fresh air, animals to care for. We could get a gentler pony for Amy to ride. Therapeutic riding does wonders. And Beth might find her voice again among the flowers, Martha added. Nature has its own way of healing. Sarah stood, moving to the window. The garden she'd planted stretched out before her, autumn flowers blazing with color. Beyond it, the new buildings of their sanctuary project were taking shape, a place where others could find the same healing she had. What do you think, James? Really think? Two little girls is a big change. He joined her at the window, rapping, his arms around her waist. I think love multiplies when you share it. Isn't that what your garden teaches us? The more you plant, the more grows. They'll need so much patience, so much understanding. Like someone else I know. He pressed a kiss to her temple. Someone who taught me that the broken places can become the strongest, given time and care. Martha cleared her throat. Well, those rooms won't furnish themselves. I'll start making lists. Beds, dresses, toys. Little girls need plenty of books too. Sarah turned in James's arms. We're really doing this. If you want to, if you're ready. She thought of that night in the snow, how close she'd come to giving up, how life had given her a second chance, not just at survival, but at joy, at family. I want to, she said firmly. They deserve what we can give them. Safety, patience, room to grow at their own pace. Then I'll call the social worker. James's smile crinkled the corners of his eyes. Tell her Crawford Ranch is about to get a little livelier. A lot. Livelier, Martha corrected, already scribbling notes. Twins means double everything. Double the love, double the chaos, double the blessings. Sarah picked up the photograph again, studying the girls' faces. Amy's determined set to her chin. Beth's gentle eyes, two little souls who needed exactly what this place could offer, acceptance, understanding, and the time to bloom in their own way. Emma and James would have been their age, she said softly. I think they'd be happy about this. About their mama finding a way to give the love they couldn't receive. James hugged her closer. They're watching, sending us these two girls who need exactly what we have to give. Outside, the autumn wind stirred the garden flowers. Soon winter would come again, but this time it would bring not endings, but beginnings. New life, new hope, new chances to love. 1 year later, winter painted Crawford Ranch in familiar whites and silvers. Sarah stood in the garden she'd created, now dusted with snow, watching Amy and Beth build a snowman while James supervised from the porch. The memorial garden bloomed even in winter, evergreen bushes and winter jasmine surrounding. Two small angel statues. Emma and James had their place here, their memory honored in this space where healing grew. "Mama!" Amy called, her leg braces leaving determined tracks in the snow. "Come see!" Beth didn't speak, but her smile said everything as she placed a carrot nose on their creation. 6 months at the ranch had worked its quiet magic, Amy growing stronger through daily rides on Sugar, the gentle pony James had found, while Beth communicated through garden tasks and gentle touches. "Beautiful," Sarah praised, adjusting the snowman's scarf. "Should we take a picture for the family album?" The album sat on their mantel, telling their story in photographs. The twins' adoption day, their first Christmas together, quiet moments of growth and triumph. Beside it, a newer photo showed 3 women and their children, the first families to find sanctuary at Crawford Ranch. James joined them in the garden, pulling Sarah close. Happy anniversary. 1 year since she'd nearly died in a storm, much like this one. 1 year since love and courage had given her a second chance at life, at family, at joy. Martha appeared on the porch, camera in hand. Everyone's smile. The flash caught them all. James and Sarah, Amy's proud grin, Beth's quiet contentment, the memorial garden standing witness. A family built from broken pieces, stronger for having been mended. "Time for hot chocolate," Martha announced. "These girls need warming up." As the children followed Martha inside, Sarah lingered in the garden. The locket at her neck held new pictures now. Emma and James on one side, Amy and Beth on the other. Different dreams, same love. "No regrets?" James asked softly. Sarah touched the angel statues, brushing away snow. "Only gratitude for the storm that brought me here, for the love that helped me heal, for all of this." Above them, winter stars emerged in the darkening sky, but Sarah wasn't afraid of the dark anymore, or the snow, or the future. She had found her way home. "Come inside," James said, offering his hand. "Our girls are waiting." Sarah took his hand, leaving footprints in the snow, not of escape this time, but of return, of belonging, of love that grew stronger with each passing season.